Welcome to Inkwell Spoken Presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. I am your host, Reggie Key, and today I got my blood brother, my cousin, Eric Jackson. Eric, thanks for being on the show. Good to see you.
It's a pleasure to be here, cousin. Thank you for the invite.
Yes, sir. So look, man, I'm gonna get right into it. I already mentioned the name of the workshop, which is also the name of the book that I wrote a couple of years ago, and it's getting into this concept that genius is common. We'll talk a little bit about where that kind of rooted from. I didn't actually create that; I just borrowed it from somebody. But there have been some components that have come together over time to really help me like serve people and making sure that they understand just how special they are and how they interact with people and their communities. So my first question, my first of a series of questions for you, Eric, is do you consider yourself to be a genius?
I do.
Okay, good. Now, was there ever, how long have you had this mindset? Have you always thought that you were a genius, or was there some turning point in your life where you was like, yeah, I thought this way, but I'm changing my mind now?
I have not for the longest. As you're aware, I'll be 44 this year. Um, but for the longest, I've always struggled with my purpose. Even today, I still question my what is my purpose here on this earth while I'm here. Um, I come from a family. We come from a family of cooks, many
Yep.
many generations of cooks. And I've always had that in my blood. It's always been in my heart. It's something that I'm truly passionate about. And I've always wanted to have a small brick and mortar, um, but I never knew the opportunity or which path to take to get there. My other passion is also giving back in the community. So when I was in living in California, I sat on the board and I ran the kitchen for the organization called Meet the Challenge. And Meet the Challenge, once a month, we would go out in the community. We would find a church that would open up their parking lot for us, and we would set up tents, grills, haircuts. We would have a pastor
Yeah.
come and give the word. We would give out shoes. We did everything we can, showers to give back. And the I ran the kitchen and the grill. So that allowed me to have the opportunity to combine both of my passion into one. And it was at that point that I knew that I was capable of doing much more than what I thought that I could do. But I
Yeah.
had to step out on faith and just trust that God would lead me to where I wanted to be or where I needed to be. So 2 summers ago now,
Mhm.
um, in Boise, Idaho, I launched Jackson Pride Barbecue. And it was just to start out small, maybe do parties, special events. And it literally blew up quickly. I mean, it blew up faster than I was able to keep up,
Okay.
to the point that I had to hire help. We were going to try to keep it in-house as much as possible with my wife and kids.
Family. Yeah.
So I didn't really have to have payroll. I could just, give them something on the
Yep.
side. But when I had to bring in help, it was like, oh man, you're like, now I got to do payroll now. But I sat back and it was just what God had done for us. I mean, we were doing private events. We were doing birthdays. We would rent out an actual restaurant slash kitchen on the weekend, and we would have our own restaurant from Friday to Sunday.
Mhm.
And it was just a great opportunity. And it was at that time that I realized that the only person that's really holding me back in what I'm trying to achieve in life and my legacy is me.
Yep.
And it was that opportunity when I realized that all I have to do is just keep moving forward. It's okay if I take 2 steps back, but if I learn from that and take 20 steps forward, then we're making progress. So yeah, that's kind of how I got to where I am today, that I know that I'm a genius. I just have to apply myself and not get in my own way.
That's beautiful, man. I'm glad you shared that. I have seen pieces of that developing in Instagram, but I didn't know that you sat on this board of this organization that
Mhm.
that serviced the community. Let me ask you a question. Like, how did you feel when you were on this board and you were contributing by overseeing the kitchen and knowing that you were part of a bigger piece that was really making sure that people in the community that needed it were getting the resources that you all collectively had?
So I'm gonna answer that in two parts. I'm gonna share a story with you that I share with many people today. It really resonated with me. My very first event, Reggie, I would never, ever, as long as I'm living, I will never forget this. My very first event, I remember this brother like I just saw him 2 minutes ago. And we're having the event, and we had a bus. The bus goes out to 3 or 4 different homeless camps, pick up people, bring them back to the central location where we are. And this one day, we were wrapping things up, and he hugged me, and he gave me a kiss on my cheek and said, "Thank you." And it wasn't in any type of malicious way. It was just, it was his way of being or showing gratitude, if you will.
Yeah.
But it made me very uncomfortable. Now we're talking, I was a different part of my life. I was still trying to learn who I am. And so probably that following week, we always did a follow-up meeting after an event just to see how things went, how can we do things better. And
Mhm.
I brought it up to the leader of the group. His name is Brother Charlie. And I said, man, this guy really made me feel uncomfortable. And I don't know what to do. Like, I wasn't going to back away from my duties or anything, but it just made me uncomfortable. And Charlie said, yeah, I saw that, Eric. He said, let me give you a little bit of history. Someone had stole that young man's box of cereal that morning.
Okay.
That young man woke up, went back to his tent, saw his cereal was gone. He was ready to destroy whatever was in his way at that camp until he found his cereal. So we take things for granted. We can get up, go to our kitchen, and pour us a bowl of cereal at any given time,
Right.
right? When you're homeless, that box of cereal is like a bag of gold, right? And for someone to have taken that from him, he was ready to, as in the book Will that I'm reading right now, he was ready to scorch earth that day. The only reason he didn't was because he saw the homeless bus pull up.
Hmm.
And that was his opportunity to walk away from what he knew was going to get him in trouble and probably landed in jail and come and get his blessing. And so his hug to me wasn't to make me feel uncomfortable. He was showing how humbled he was that he took that step of faith and did not go off on people at that camp, but rather got on that bus and came to us where he received a much bigger blessing
Yeah.
than just a box of cereal.
Yeah.
So that put things in perspective for me. So I had been, again, this was my very first event. I was in California for 12 years. So I was a part of that organization for 12 years. And I can probably count on one hand how many times I missed an event. Otherwise, we were always there, present from beginning to end.
Hmm.
That organization, it was bigger than who I was. It gave me the opportunity because we look at homelessness as, man, this person made a bad decision in life and now they're living on the street. That is not the case for many people out there.
Yeah.
They just, it's just something that happened in their life, and some of them actually want to be out there. The cost of living now and is astronomical, and so not every person who's living on the street has a bad story. A
Yeah.
lot of them have degrees. A lot of them have families. It's just something that happened in their life that curtailed their destiny, and that's how they ended up. But being a part of Meet the Challenge, man, it was just a blessing. I loved it. I want to Let me back up. When I was living in Boise, now I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. When I was in Boise, I was seeing exactly what was transpiring in San Jose, California,
Yep.
where the cost of living was getting extremely high, and you started to see more and more people out on the street. So I was working on expanding Meet the Challenge to the streets of Boise. Now I'm here in Jacksonville, and I'm seeing the same thing here in Jacksonville. So as I get more established, my ultimate goal is to, again, step out on faith, start small, but bring Meet the Challenge to Jacksonville and get out there in the community and let people know that people genuinely and truly care.
Man, that's really dope, man, because you know I've done some work with the homeless and I see the same thing that you're seeing, where I've talked to some people who, like you said, like I've got a degree, I'm choosing to live on the streets because, you know, cost of living, whatever. It's just these circumstances that are just like, they're like, I'm not going to plug into the system and be forced to struggle in a way that is conventional for everybody else. I've chosen this life for myself. And that, you know, that's their choice, obviously, right? But to be able to still see them and connect with them and communicate with them and let them know, hey, look, you're still a part of society. You shouldn't feel ostracized, alienated, marginalized, whatever you want to use, whatever words you want to use. You still should have the right to a shower, the right to getting your haircut, looking clean, right? The right to some clothes, some affordable clothes, the right to some food, some, not just some thrown together food, but like some well thought out,
Yeah,
flavorful, nutritious food. That's your,
right,
like, that's the part of the inalienable right of a human being, right? That the Constitution is supposed to protect and preserve, right? And
correct.
the fact that you've been to 3 different states, and I can throw in Illinois because the same thing I see in Illinois, I saw in Illinois in my time there. It's consistent across, you know, America. So hold on for a second. Something is interfering. All right. So I see what you're saying, and I see where you're going, and it's a good place. So I want to thank you for sharing that so early in the conversation, because it would have surely come up later.
Sure.
Um, Now you are already in the right path because you have found like the thing that kind of breaks your heart, and you found a way to address it, and that gets into what we're going to talk about over the next, you know, 30 or 40 minutes. So my next question for you, when there was this time when you did not associate genius to yourself, who did you associate it to? Like, who came to mind? Whose face popped up in your head when somebody said this word genius?
Um, I'm I'm probably gonna have to say if you had to just randomly ask me where on the street, I would probably say Malcolm X. I'm a huge Malcolm X
Oh, word?
believer, follower. Yeah, I
Okay.
am. I am. Um, I've always associated myself with Malcolm in certain ways. Reggie, I'm sorry. I thought I turned my volume off. Give me
No,
one
you're
second.
good.
I'm sorry. I'm just turning my phone off. Can't turn my phone off because I'm on my hotspot.
Oh, don't do that. You
I
just
just
threw
threw it
it
to I just threw it to the other side of the room. We good now. um, Brother Malcolm came from an area that he didn't let his past dictate his future.
Yeah.
And he came to a pivotal point in his life where he knew that he had to stand up for himself. He couldn't use any excuses. He wouldn't use any excuses. And he went up against an organization that was 100 times bigger than him because he had a belief within himself.
Yeah.
And you know, I didn't grow up in the best of neighborhoods. I had resources around me. I had cousins, I had aunts. I remember, you know, when you and I would get together and you would help me out with, you know, either math or reading. And I feel like when you have those resources and you utilize those resources, you can, they can aid you in becoming the person that you want to be. Quite often, especially as men, and I'm not trying to go off the beaten path here,
No, let's go.
but we're having a real conversation.
Yep.
I'm learning as a man that sometimes we take on the weight of the world. Society expects us to take on the weight of the world, our careers, our family, us just being men. But sometimes we're not sometimes, but many times we are human and we don't have the strength 7 days a week, 365 a year. Sometimes we have to rely on people around us to help us achieve our goals.
Absolutely.
And that's very tough for me because I'm a very prideful person. I keep a lot of stuff within me, but I'm learning to have to bring in my wife because she has strengths in areas where I am weak and
Yep.
vice versa. Now I'm learning even with my kids, now that they're young adults, now they're bringing things to the table where I'm like, man, I didn't even think about that, or areas that I want to improve on, and they are strong. So now I am feeding off of them. And so I am learning that this journey is not a journey that you can do by yourself.
Nope.
And there are resources, but you have to sometimes put your pride and ego aside and bring those resources in, as long as they're good, as long as they're healthy and they're helping you achieve your goals, and bring them in and rely on them just like they rely on you.
And see, here's the beauty of it. When you recognize the genius in yourself and you can see it in other people, then you can see how you fit together and be like, hey, look, because one of my guests said, hey, look, it's zeros and nines for him. He actually is. You and this guy I'm talking about remind me of one another because you're really good with getting these meats seasoned and cooked and everything, and just
Right.
like really good cooks, right? But he was like, look, I got zeros and nines. He's like, I know what I'm not good at, and that's okay. But he's like, the things that I do excel at, I never rate myself at a 10. I'm always at a 9 because I don't want to get complacent. There's always room to improve. But in those zeros and nines, he can see somebody else that may rate at a 9 where he rates at a 0 and say, come, let's work together. Matter of fact, him and I are doing it right now. I don't
Right.
cook as well as him, but then the business side, I have some experience that he doesn't. And so we just come together. Like I've hosted his family at our house. We've sat down and done business plans. Like we come together. And that's the beauty of knowing that, hey, look, when you recognize that you're a genius, it's not that you're trying to lift yourself above somebody else. The only thing that you're trying to lift yourself above, and I heard this when you were speaking, is your circumstance. Like if your circumstance is limiting you, if your community that you were born into, the time that you were born into has limitations on you and has these limited parameters, your what you have to do, like Malcolm X did, is ascend beyond and above your circumstance. And don't let
Right.
your circumstances define you, but rather redefine your circumstances according to what's on the inside of you. Right.
Right.
And so that's what I hear you saying. And so I never knew that about you, man, that you looked up to Malcolm X. I mean, that's great. The thing though the person that I want to highlight that helps kind of get us into the next level of thinking is that when I ask most people, especially like middle schoolers and high schoolers, this is the main audience that I've had, in the past. Universally, they all say Einstein. Not that they look up to Einstein, but that this is not a personal, like yours was personal, and that's fine. But it's like a generic, like the image, the face that comes up is Einstein. And there's something interesting that happens, as far as I've seen it, when we do that. So we'll attribute genius to Einstein, but because he was this phenomenal thinker in mind in physics, we're like, well, I don't know physics. I don't know what E equals MC squared is. I don't care about the theory of relativity, so I'm not a genius. We disassociate. We say, okay, he got it, and because he has it, I don't. And that's flawed thinking, because in truth, he was just one type of genius. There are many different types of genius in the world, right? And his genius is associated to academics, right? But there's two things that's funny about that. One is not funny at all. Academics, again, is just one type of genius. Genius does not mean high IQ. Genius does not mean, well, at least high IQ by standardized testing. Genius does not mean that you got straight A's in school at all. That type of person has a genius, but it's not the same as yours. And so we have to stop this comparison where we say, okay, my genius has to look like this person's genius or this person's genius. No, your genius is uniquely imprinted to you. And the funny thing that I wanted to mention is Einstein in school, I did some research on him. He wasn't that great of a student.
Correct. I knew that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like his parents got that note home, like, yeah, you might want to make sure Einstein work with his hands. He's not fitting in here, right? And we'll get into why that is. He thought different, and his thought pattern didn't fit the school system. And so the school system tried to say he doesn't belong here. Even
Right.
in college, there was a place where the professors were fed up and tired of him because he was daydreaming. The professors would be teaching, and he would be like looking out the window, and they would be like, yo, Einstein, are you paying attention? Like, get out of my class. You're a disruption. You're not participating. But this man was imagining what it would be like to ride a sunbeam from the sun to the earth. And that's how he
Mm-hmm.
began to come up with the theories that he postulated, because he was a visual, a right brain type of thinker. But that wasn't what the school system was trying to breed in their students.
Right.
And so there's this quote that I give people that in times past it was said to have come from Einstein, but you know the internet be lying.
Right.
So I've seen now that it's not really Einstein at all. Um, it doesn't matter, but I want to hit you with this quote, and then we can take a 30-second break to kind of give you a chance to think about it, and then we can talk about it some more. Is that cool?
That works.
All right. So here's a quote. It goes like this. If you judge a fish by how well it can climb a tree, it'll spend its entire life thinking it's stupid.
Hmm.
Have you heard that before?
I have not.
All right. So I'm gonna let that marinate for a little bit. We're gonna take a brief 30-second break, okay?
All right.
And we're back. So you've had a chance to kind of think on that. What does that mean? Like how's that hit you when you hear that?
Say it one more time. So if a fish.
Yeah. If you judge a fish by how well it can climb a tree, it'll spend its entire life thinking it's stupid.
I don't know. I have to analyze that a little bit.
Okay. Now, so let's do it like right now in real time. Let's analyze it.
Right.
So fish aren't designed to climb trees, right?
Correct.
Fish are designed for what? What element do they thrive in?
Water.
Water. They are streamlined for water. They have gills and scales that help them be proficient in the water. And so if somebody comes along and begins to judge this fish, if you happen to see a fish flopping around on the land, let's just say this fish is sentient. It can think on its own, and it can maybe, internalize how we internalize things. If somebody came and told this fish, like, you dumb, you can't even climb this tree. And somebody every day kept saying the same thing to this fish, eventually the fish will forget, like, I don't even belong here. This is not my lane. This is not my element. And it might begin to devalue how it was created and who it is. Like, man, I should be, yeah, you're right. I must be dumb because I can't climb this tree. But it's like, dude, like, you don't belong on land first and foremost, and you shouldn't be climbing trees. You're not a bear. Like, you shouldn't be climbing trees at all. But the thing of it is, when we look at ourselves and try to do something or align ourselves with someone else's genius, we're that fish that's out of water. Like, Einstein was a bear. That dude climbed trees, right?
Right.
We, on the other hand, have a different element. And for the purpose of this example and for the purpose of this quote, let's just say our element is water. And so we've got to get into the right water. We've got to get into an ocean for either salt water, or get into these rivers that are fresh water, because there's like fresh water and salt water differences. Some animals thrive in salt water that don't thrive in fresh water, and vice versa. But we've got to figure out what our lane is, and then begin to allow ourselves to be judged based on that, versus being judged on something that's not even what we were purposed to do.
Right.
And that's, the comparison of genius. That's how when I got this quote, I'm like, this is how we treat genius. Like, we sit there and value our genius based off of somebody else's. And we're completely different from them. We need to stop saying that, hey, I'm not Einstein, so I'm not a genius. That's incorrect.
Right.
You feel me?
That makes sense.
So, we've heard this quote, a fish out of water. We know what happened. You know what happened because I know you love to cook fish. If a fish stay out of water for too long, what's going to happen?
Dead.
It's going to die and it's going to be
Right.
somebody's dinner, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so that serves a whole nother purpose. But what I'm seeing lately, Eric, is I look around and I see genius dying around me.
Mm.
And I feel like it's my job to revitalize, resuscitate, and resurrect the genius that I see in people that they're either disregarding or have just allowed the world to say, like, no, you're not doing this right. All right. And the way that I help people figure out what their genius is by helping them figure out, well, what's your lane? What's your element? And I do
Mm-hmm.
that by three components. And it's getting into your passion, your talent, and your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
These three things are going to help define your element and help define like what you're meant to do in your community as it relates to your element and how you're meant to do it. So let's
Right.
get into it. In the same way that we didn't have to really deconstruct genius too much because you already understood, like, nah, my genius ain't Einstein, but I'm a genius though. But we're
Mm-hmm.
going to deconstruct passion a little bit. Okay. We're going to take
Mm-hmm.
these words and kind of do a paradigm shift, go against the sand a little bit and get a different definition for them that helps unlock genius.
Mm.
So, what comes to mind when you hear this word passion?
For me, what comes to mind is the ability to do something that I'm very efficient at, but it's something that is always on my mind, something that I would give anything and everything to do it if I could. If it was taken from me, it would feel like a part of me was taken out.
That's good. I like that. So you see how that's very elemental. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you said that last part, if someone took this away from me, it would feel like something in me was being taken out. It's
Right.
almost like taking that fish out of the water.
Right.
Like you can't thrive, you can't hope to be successful without knowing what your passion is. Passion is like the fuel in your tank. It drives you. Passion allowed Malcolm X, like you said, to go against this much larger organization that should have crushed him and unfortunately did end up taking his life, but
Right.
not before he got into his genius and was able to get people to think differently before he got on the scene. He
Mm-hmm.
challenged a Goliath system and did not care. Passion will do that. Passion will make you very much like King David. Like, who is this uncircumcised dog? I don't
Right.
care if he's 9 feet tall or not. Who is this dude that's talking against my people?
Right.
Let me get at him. Y'all
Mm-hmm.
don't want to do nothing? Yeah, I'm gonna get at him. Passion
Mm-hmm.
will say, I don't care how big the system is, how big the entity is. I see something wrong here and I'm gonna fix it.
Right.
So that part about seeing something wrong though is where I want to focus on because most people, when they think of passion, they think about, we tell kids when they get into high school and college, like, hey, you know what? If you choose your career, like focus on do what you love. And I don't say that. I come from the exact opposite end of the spectrum because I say, you know what? Focus on what you hate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And here's why. Like, again, just like with this whole Genius is Common movement, that was started by this dude, Bruce George. And I just happened to know him and get in on this movement that's become nationwide. And so that component was also paired with, I read this book one time by Mike Murdoch called The Assignment. And then that
Mm-hmm.
assignment is basically it said, hey, if you want to find your assignment, figure out what it is that you hate and then address it. Because it was like what you hate is something that's broken in the world that needs to be fixed. And you might not be the only person that hates it, but you have a very unique perspective on it. You have a very unique approach to it that you'll begin to address the issue that you hate in a way that's unique only to you. And it'll create this passion on the inside of you because whether you're doing something in small endeavors or large, it won't matter. Like you'll always be going at it. And so when I talk to people and I'm like, hey, if you don't know or if you feel uncomfortable saying what you hate, just look around you and see like what is it that affects me in a negative way. Maybe when you were
Mm-hmm.
younger. Most of the time we're exposed to it when we were younger and to kind of defenseless and not able to really navigate the world or know who we are. And so something happens to us at an earlier stage in our life where we're like, oh, I hated that. I hated that about my childhood. And when you get older, when you see it operating in other people or hurting other people, you're like, I hate that. And you may begin to say things like, somebody should do something about that. And if you find yourself constantly saying like that, when you see that thing, or you around your friends and like, oh, yo, don't let Eric see that. He's gonna go off.
Right.
Don't, oh, hey, he saw it. Because
Right.
you're gonna start, because you're gonna speak about it. And if you keep saying somebody should do something about it, that somebody is actually you. Right. So within that context, that's how I define passion, to help get you in your right element to understand what your genius is. So Eric, what would you say it is that you hate? I have several things, but what would you say first thing that comes to your mind?
That I hate. Wow. Let's see here. That I absolutely hate. Oh no, Reggie. Let me think about that for a second.
Can I help you?
Sure.
This organization that you were on the board for in California, what was the name of it again?
Meet the Challenge.
Meet the Challenge. What is it that they did for, and it was they were helping the homeless, right? What is it that you saw as a problem with the homeless in that community that Meet the Challenge was addressing?
Let me circle back to that. But when you bring up that organization, I would say the one thing that I would hate is when people say they're going to do something and they don't do it. So we're based on, I don't want to say the success, but obviously the efficiency of how that day can run from a logistics standpoint is very based on volunteers. So you may have 30 people that sign up, but 10 show. And I hate that. You know, I hate it in that sense. I hate it when people say they're going to do something and they don't do it. Quite often, the few friends that I've met here in Jacksonville, they often say, man, I appreciate you for doing what you said you were going to do. And it numbs me when they say that, because I'm like, but I said I was going to do it though. And they're quick to school me. They're like, well, but not everyone does that. You know, some people say they'll do it and they won't show up, or they don't follow through. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that's a reality. So I would say that's one thing that I definitely hate. Don't say you're going to do something and don't do it. And so when I'm listening to you, when I'm listening to this interview, I'm learning of gaps within myself that I can improve as it relates to the genius, because I will not say anything. I'm just like, all right, well, if you say you're going to do something, you don't do it. To me, you're blocking your blessing. But why didn't I say anything? Why didn't I speak up? Why didn't I not call that person and say, hey, was everything okay? Did you need anything? Did you need a ride? You know, you need gas money? Try to elevate that person, because you don't know where they are in their life, and maybe they couldn't get there. So maybe I could have assisted them to help them do what it is they said they were going to do.
That's fair. But I will wager, Eric, that you already do that, because you're a leader. Like, you've been on campuses for the latter part of 2 decades, helping people, leading teams to make sure that, hey, look, your responsibility is this. And I'm sure that within your teamwork is most effective when everybody knows their role and knows that my role is going to inform and dictate how well you do your role.
Correct.
Like, if you don't show up and do your part, then hey, guess what? If my thing is sequential, I can't do anything until you do your part. And I'm sure that you've had to train people. I think you're already doing it. You just didn't maybe see it for Meet the Challenge, because, you know, it's tough. It's easier to tell somebody, hey, look, you're not meeting your role when they're getting paid. Right. Like, hey, your performance got to be judged a certain way because you're not showing up. You don't have no integrity. You're not coming up and doing what you said that you signed on to do for this job. Volunteering is different. But I just want to highlight that I feel like you already are one who helps people do that by leading by example as you form these teams for the latter part of 2 decades on these various campuses that you've been on.
That's correct. That's a fair statement. But again, I've always done this. I've even been questioned to why I put so much pressure on myself, because I try to be the very best person that I can be. So when I got here to Jacksonville, I inherited this team. Now, okay, let's say I got a team of landscapers. Okay, well, it's very simple. Come to work, get on the lawnmower, mow the facility. But has anyone really sat down with them and spoken to them about roles and responsibilities? Here's my role. This is how your role incorporates to the bigger picture of the campus. If we maintain the way that this facility looks, those new students are going to have a higher probability of wanting to come to this campus because of the first impression.
Mhm.
So sometimes we take things for granted. We just think, okay, they know how to do their job, but do they know why they're there and how that position incorporates into the bigger picture? And those are the things that I identified that I want to get better at as a leader, because not everyone understands roles and responsibilities, and they are so critical, and they can derail your organization if each person does not know their role and responsibility and how it incorporates to the bigger picture and the bigger goal.
Yeah, it's these bigger pictures that I think are represented by systems. And so I have an example that gets into just how powerful it is to recognize what it is that you hate as it relates to the bigger picture of a thing or the bigger picture of a system. That, most of the time, the things that we hate are when we don't have control over something. The systems tend to do that. And so I have a real life example that really brings this home, I think. All right. So one year, a couple years back, I was asked by a principal to come into a elementary school and talk to 10 little boys. They were all minorities. They were in the third, fourth, and fifth grade, but all these little boys were in one class all day. So we would have called that special ed back in the day, right? Now they call it IEP, politicized as IEP, Individual Education Plan. And so come in and just talk to them. Now, these little boys had all types of negative labels put on them: ADD, ADHD, emotionally disruptive, and this, that, and the third, right? So I'm workshopping Genius at that point. I hadn't finalized everything, but I was like, I'm gonna start talking to them about Genius. So first thing I did was I was like, hey, all of you are geniuses. And Eric, you should have seen the look on their face. It was like, just this guy, like, you in the wrong class, homie. Like, that's not who we are. But then they started roasting one another. Like they were more comfortable with negative affirmations than positive affirmations. So I said, okay, let's push that to the side for a second. Let me ask you a question. This is why I ask this question so pointedly when it comes to passion, because with most of us, we can tell you what we hate real quick, especially kids. I was like, tell me what you hate. And Eric, when I tell you that these 10 little boys who could never agree on anything, what to play, when to play it, all of them told me the same thing, almost like in unison. They was like, we hate school, Mr. Key, now what? They thought they had like wrecked my whole workshop or like just, throwing it off the trails, off the tracks. But I was like, I'm so glad you said that, because if you follow my logic, and I'm saying the thing that you hate is the thing that you were meant to fix. Then I was like, I'm looking at 10 future educators. And they got real quiet, and their eyes got real big. They started backing away from me. I'm like, nah, come here though. Don't back away. Let me explain this to you. Let me explain why you feel the way you feel. I was like, look, school, this system that you're in, this system that's telling you to climb this tree when you're a fish that needs to be in water. This system is supposed to be recognizing that there are 8 different learning styles, but at most schools only really teach from 3. Visual, auditory, and a left brain thinker, logical. That's people who are really good at math. But if you're a right brain thinker, you're a visual person, like Einstein was a visual person. If you're like expeditionary learning or exploratory, meaning you have to actually like get up and move around. No, that's kinesthetic. Expeditionary and exploratory learners need to feel with their hands. They need to like your hands-on learners. But if you're told, keep your hands to yourself, stop touching that. Or if you're this kinesthetic learner who has to, I've seen people who can't stay still in class. They're always moving. And most of the time, what does the teacher do? Hey, stop moving, stay still, right? But instead of suppressing those learning styles, if they embrace them and say, hey, look, your learning style is actually missing in the school system that we have. That's why the school system is broken. Just like how the earth is broken. Like you wouldn't disagree with me if I said the earth is broken, right?
No, absolutely not.
And I think most people, even teachers, when I'm saying this, first they get nervous when they're like, why is this dude gonna let them talk about what they hate? Like, does he know who he's talking to? But then when I start saying like the school system is broken and there's a way to fix it, they start listening because they know like, yeah, there is something broken here. And so I told these 10 little boys, I was like, if you take the learning style that you have, which is easy to identify, and you then make it become your teaching style, and instead of running away from the system that marginalized you, you run towards it. Your learning style then becomes your teaching style. And now you're going to reach other people with the same learning style. That revolutionizes the game. That now helps other people feel like, well, I belong. Because before they were getting all this information in another language that they didn't understand. It was like, I don't understand what you're saying. And I feel dumb because I don't learn like Susie over here, who's picking up everything that you're putting down in her language. Now they no longer feel like a fish out of water. Now they have purpose. And they're like, I know exactly why I'm here. I know exactly why I went through this trauma that I had as a kid, where I was made to feel like I didn't belong. I was made to feel like I was dumb, like that fish out of water. And I'm like, I'm gonna make sure nobody else ever feels like that again, because I'm gonna contribute something to it instead of just complaining about it and walking away. That's drive. That's passion.
Right.
And like I said, it's my example is in the school system, but any industry that you look at has this same problem.
Sure.
Anytime humans are involved, you're going to have this thing show up.
You are absolutely right. Absolutely right.
All right, go ahead. You got something to say. You went with the head.
No. I'm not. These past 8 months have been the toughest of my entire career.
Yeah.
And I have done some amazing things in my career, Reggie. And I've seen some things. But these past 8 months have been tough. I've seen people since I've been there come and go. This is a very unique place that I'm working at right now. But I'm constantly asked, why are you still here? And my response is, I feel like there's something bigger than me. And that's the reason why I'm still here. If every time we're faced with an obstacle in life and we run, how do you learn?
Yeah.
How do you grow? You can't run every single time that you're faced with a challenge. There is a reason why I was born here. I believe that in my heart. I believe that in my spirit. And until I'm told otherwise, I'm going to continue to try and tough it out. But the reason why I made that face was because I constantly think about that, and I actually speak of that when I'm talking to other people. Anytime you have the human element involved,
yeah,
it's a wrap. You can almost guarantee you're going to have challenges because you have different personalities. And that's one thing, I don't get off topic, but that's one thing that I don't think we really truly appreciate and take advantage of is, we don't really understand what makes that person them and what makes us. We know what makes us us, but we don't know what makes that person them and the person and the other people in that room.
And sometimes we don't even care.
Sometimes we don't even care. Exactly. So we don't know why Joe is asking a bunch of questions when Joe is very analytical. We don't know why Susie is asking those questions when Susie says maybe she is slower to understand the big picture. We always quick to criticize, but we're not quick to really understand and get to know that person and figure out how their strengths can make the organization better. I'm sorry. I had to get that off my chest.
No, but it fits though.
It does.
So fit because what you're talking about is equipping people. And instead of alienating them for how they think or whatever is perceived as, you're not thinking like we want you to think, so you're wrong. Like, exactly. No, don't do that. That's when the system gets off. That's
Right.
when the system it starts to separate. And we say like no child left behind or whatever, but we're constantly leaving people behind because they don't fit into the system that's in place. I don't care how long the system's been in place. If anybody comes into it and feels like they don't belong, or feels like, hey, look, my way of thinking or my way of doing things isn't correct here. I mean, there's a way to do things, yes, but then there's still this way to embrace how you internalize something and then feel like you can contribute to improve it.
Right.
The one thing that I feel like everybody hates is failure, and that's why so many people run from a thing, or that's why people are asking you like, "Hey, man, why are you still here though?" But you said this earlier on in our interview, and I want to highlight it now. I have an acronym that I found for FAIL, and it goes: fail is the first attempt in learning.
Yep.
But if you short circuit the process, every time you fail, you're like, nope, I'm not doing that no more. Then you're not learning. In fact, it's not a fail as long as you learn from whatever the misstep was.
Right.
Because it's I've also said that fail is the way to teach yourself in the future. It's a future lesson that you've yet to learn, right?
Yep.
And so if we just have that mentality and allow people the room to fail, but then give them the opportunity to learn from it, then we're equipping them. But as it relates to this passion, and I feel like we're starting to tap into yours even more. I want to go to the next level. So let's move from passion to talent, because once you've identified what it is that's broken in your environment, neighborhood, school, workplace, whatever, once you've identified what's broken, I mean, in your house, Eric, when you find something that's broken, the first thing you look for is a tool, the right tool to fix it. That's what your talent is. Right. Your talent is this tool, and most people almost even overlook it. They're like, man, I've always had this. Like, I don't know that that's going to do anything, but it's like, what tool do you possess that can help address and fix this hate, this thing that you hate that's driving you? Like, I need to do something about it. What do I do? Well, what you do is wrapped up in your talent. And people have multiple talents too, right? But I always kind of talk about, let's go back to David and Goliath, right? They tried to give David the wrong type of tool. They was like, here, take King Saul's sword and his breastplate and his helmet. And David was like, this don't fit me. Like, no, don't. It's like, you know what? I've been killing bears and lions, protecting my father's sheep. Give me my slingshot. He knew. He was like, see those 5 smooth stones. Give me my slingshot. I'm gonna show y'all something. I'm proficient with this slingshot though. They're like, it's just a slingshot. Like, I've been doing this thing all my life. I know how to do this.
Right.
And so for those who would say, I don't have a talent, what I tell them is, you know what? It's generational. You got to look, like you already mentioned this too. He was like, hey, look, you come from a family of cooks, right? And so, I'm getting something for you. When we realize that there is something generational on the inside of us that's been trying to manifest and make itself known in our hand. That's what's already in our hand. Like even with Moses and God, when God was talking to Moses and said, hey, look, I need you to deliver my people from Egypt. He was like, I can't talk good, right? I got to stutter. And God was like, well, first of all, who made your mouth? But anyways, that's a whole, he was like, all right, fine. I'm gonna give you your brother Aaron. You're going to find him. Moses was still talking smack, like, but I can't. And God just got fed up. I don't know if he got fed up, but he was like, dude, what's in your hand? And Moses was like, this raggedy staff. He was like, put that staff on the ground. And that staff turned into a snake. And then he said, pick it up by his tail and it turned back into a staff. He was like, you got all you need right in your hand. The thing that you're like disowning and not even really paying attention to, you can use that. And I'm not saying that whatever your talent is, you're disowning it, not, but a lot of people overlook it because it's so common to them that they're like, that's nothing.
Right.
But you already know you got something that's not nothing. You have at least one talent, and that's this ability. Now, I'm gonna say cooking in a very different way. You have the ability to see the individual pieces of a thing and know how to treat them so that when they come together, they become something bigger than the individual.
Right.
That's what cooking is really all about. Treating individual components in such a way that when you bring them together, they create something that is universally including everything, but becomes a whole new thing. That's teamwork.
Right.
You have the ability, Eric, to take the individual component or the individual person and equip them and say, this is what makes you unique. Matter of fact, if we just put you here and do this in this way, when we bring you together, when I put you in this pot with this okra and this roux, right? We gonna make a jambalaya that ain't nobody ever gonna have said they tasted before ever in life.
Right.
And so I see that in you now. I mean, if I can get to the end, purpose is really just, it's really simple. It's identifying what your God-given talent is, and then using that as a tool to address the thing that's broken. That you're like, man, I hate when I see that. And so this is how, you know, I saw too, very early on when we were talking, I was like, you need to bring Meet the Challenge to Florida. I saw it, I was like, man, because you still have those connects. You work with them for over a decade. And I'm sure if you went to them and said, hey, look, I see the same issue plaguing the homeless people out here that we saw and that we are addressing in California. If you told them I want to bring that from the West Coast to the East Coast, I'm sure they would be like, yo, let's get it done.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then it's just a matter of finding the right people, because you have the expertise in the cooking, but it doesn't mean that you can do the other components of gathering people and the marketing and the haircuts. Like you're not supposed to be able to do it all. You find the genius who cuts hair. You find the genius who can get the clothing in. You find the genius who can, and y'all come together and make a beautiful gumbo, right? I said jambalaya before. Your thing is gumbo, right?
It's gumbo, yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, that I see, you know, this clearly you have a talent to cook, but knowing what I just said, how to bring elements together and bring the best out of them to create something even better, that's what you're gifted at doing. And it's not just with food, but it's with people.
Right. That's great perspective, man. I mean, that really kind of gets things thinking up in here, but really aligns with what I feel here in my heart, why I continue to stay here. It's because I know and I'm driven to bring these components together and deliver a product for our client. It's not going to always be easy. It's not going to always be laid out in front of you. But you got to believe, you got to have faith. And if you put those three components together, and I was sitting here trying to think, I'm missing one: talent, purpose, and
passion.
I think you can accomplish anything in life that you put your mind to with those three elements.
Yes, sir. It's like a puzzle piece, right? It's like, man, all right, I think this goes here, and this is where you have to be comfortable in failing, though.
Right.
Because it's not going to click the first time. You just keep at it. Like, I know I got something here. If I just move this piece this way and take this over here, because you know, you have, I'm sure, like me, you have multiple things that you hate. You have multiple talents, and trying to see how those come together and work in tandem can be difficult. But once you hit it, though, you're like, oh, I found it.
Right.
And it's, you know, there's self-affirmation. This whole workshop is about self-affirmation. But then once you affirm that you have genius, then you go about seeing how can I use that to impact others? How can I tell somebody else, hey, look, you have genius too, though. And I need you here with your genius to help me accomplish something bigger than the two of us.
Right.
Or the team of us, whatever, right? And so that element you've been saying this whole time. And sometimes it just takes somebody to say, you know what, though, what you're doing, you know, is this, though, it's genius.
Right. I love it, cuz.
I love it too, man. I get hype about it. The one thing I want to say, just to kind of close us out, is somebody may hear that, and this is not something that you're supposed to walk out and, you know, introduce yourself as like, hey, I'm Eric and I'm a genius. Like this, that's not how it works. It's not Wile E. Coyote super genius, you know, business card. Because at the end of the day, humility is not just making sure that you don't think too highly of yourself, but it's also about not thinking too lowly of yourself either.
Absolutely.
Right? Because if you think too lowly of yourself, you'll be like, well, I don't have anything to contribute and offer to the world. Yes, you do.
Right. Right. Yes, sir.
That's basically the crux of what I'm trying to get into anybody's ear that will listen.
I want to purpose, talent,
and passion. This is what I, you know, I don't know, I guess it was over a year ago now. I was talking to your son about it because look, when you can figure out this genius, this can help you figure out if you need to go to college and if you need to go, what major it should be that revolves around this particular genius that you're trying to unleash onto the world.
All right. Okay. Good stuff, man. I appreciate this. This was awesome. I didn't know what to expect. But you did a really good job in just outlining the expectations and just with the flow and making things comfortable, man. So I appreciate that, Reggie.
Hey,
Thank you.
salute. Appreciate it too, man.
Salute
We've
to
been at
you
this for a
too,
while
man.
now. So look, I'm gonna end it with this, man. It's my uncommon cue to see the genius in you. This has been Reggie Key, motivational speaker, guest author, publisher of Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. And this has been my genius cousin, my genius guest, Eric Jackson.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Reggie.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode. Make sure you pick up the book, Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny by my dad, Reggie Legend, available on Amazon and at inkwellspoken.com. Connect with us at Inkwellspoken on all social media platforms. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload.